Hey everyone, I'm Justin Fiedler, and this is DIRTRACKR Conversations. On this episode of the show, I'm joined by longtime late model announcer and owner of MSR Mafia, Ben Shelton. We talk a ton of late model stuff, including all the parity we've seen this season, what's up with Brandon Sheppard, how common it is to see someone like Brandon Overton give up a points lead, the upcoming FloRacing Night in America series, and much more. Ben is a guy that's super locked into the late model community, and I knew he'd be a good one to pepper with my late model questions. A quick note, I talked to Ben before this week's Flo Night in America season opener was postponed, so that's why you'll hear us talk like it's still happening. That series will now open March 31st at Tri City Speedway. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Ben Shelton. Ben, you're into so many things at this point. I'm not even sure what to call you. You're an announcer guy. You've got your web clients. Like, I don't even know where to start. But I do want to start in one specific place. And you are so locked into the late model world. And I remember, like, me and you have known each other a long time. We worked at World Racing Group together when you were the series announcer for the late models. And I remember being in the late model command center at World Finals. It had to have been 2014, 2015, something like that. And you and Kevin Kovac were going down the entry list for the night. And you guys were calling out drivers' names, and you were off the top of your head telling him their hometowns. And I was completely blown away that you just had that information in your brain, and you were just like it was just in there. And I could not imagine having the hometowns of 90 late model drivers memorized to that point. It completely blew me away.
You know, it's one of those things where if you love something, you're gonna do it. You're gonna do a really good job with it. And man, I grew up around racing my whole life, and you know, the late model world has been very good to me. But the irony is, growing up in Memphis, I grew up with Jeff and Sammy Swindell and Lee Brewer Jr., Greg Hodnett, those guys. So sprint car runs deep in me. But yeah, I'm probably most known for the late model stuff. And you know, I just love what I do, and I take a lot of pride in what I do. And you know, the biggest fear I have in doing anything is not being prepared. That probably goes back to my engineering days, and I just don't want to look like an idiot. I mean, just to be honest with you. So yeah, it's I've got to work with a lot of cool people, and I picked up some cool stuff along the ways, and I've definitely picked up some OCD tendencies along the ways. Thus, the hometown game.
So I wanted to have you on. You know, you guys are going to get ready to do the Flo kind of late model night in America stuff here coming up pretty quick, and I definitely want to talk about that. But I feel like my late model knowledge only goes back a few years, and obviously yours is going to be much larger and broader than mine. But I feel like we're kind of in a really weird point right now with late model racing. It seems like there's just a ton of parity right now. And I'm wondering if you guys kind of that are more kind of entrenched in the world are seeing the same thing.
Well, we are, and you know, the difference is, and you know, no discredit to these guys that have won 500, 600. There's some guys in late model racing that have won pushing 1,000 races, but man, we're in a different time now. You know, back then there might be 2 or 3 guys that had really good stuff, and everybody else made the best of what they had. And nowadays, you pull into a show with 40 cars, and hell, 30 of them may have the best on stuff that you can buy. And you know, and then there's a lot of talented drivers. And yeah, the parity is really, really tough. I mean, you know, I kind of poke fun at my sprint car friends because I'm like, hey, you know, in my sport, somebody can start outside the top 3 rows and win the feature, you know, but it's getting harder. I'm not going to lie to you. It used to be if you threw up a bonus for a guy to go back 5 or 6 rows or back of the pack in late models, guys would jump on it. Man, you can't spot 10 guys, the starting spot in front of you in the feature. You're going to have a really hard time getting the win. So yeah, it is really amazing the parity that has developed in our sport. And it's something we're really proud of, and hopefully it continues to stay.
What do you think of the situation that we're kind of watching Brandon Sheppard in right now? You know, he's a guy that he's won so often in the last couple of years, and it's just strange to see him like running 8th or 9th at an Outlaw show or a Lucas show and not really be a factor. Like, what are you hearing about that, and what do you think about that so far?
Well, just talking to the team at Speed Weeks, you know, they had a lot of near misses at Speed Weeks, and you know, I know those guys well. I mean, obviously, they're kind of the Rick Hendrick of the sport, if you will. I mean, you know, you got a great crew there, and you've got obviously Mark Richards and Steve Baker at the helm, and you got Brandon Sheppard, the driver. And I think it just shows how tough the sport is. And I think sometimes every team, they start experimenting with making things faster, and they get a little off base. And you know, and then sometimes it's hard to get back to base. And then sometimes you never know if they're not working on something right now, or maybe they're not going to get any wins right now, but because of what they're doing right now and developing, they may get 20 wins on the back half of the season. It's crazy to think that we could get out of March and Brandon Sheppard not win, but hey man, they're headed to Cherokee Speedway this weekend, and that team's never won there with Brandon Sheppard. So it is feasible to think we could start April with Brandon Sheppard winless. Kind of blows my mind, but if we know anything about that Rocket team, some people are taking a few jabs at him, and one thing we know, you don't poke Mark Richards, because when you do, he comes back on the backside, and that team wins 30, 40 races in a year.
What are your kind of early impressions of Lucas so far? It seemed like, we had a lot of guys kind of leave Florida battered and bloodied, and some, some names we didn't expect. Stormy Scott, some of these guys winning races. Yeah. But what were your kind of early impressions through that first part of the season, and even back to this most recent weekend at Atomic?
I think you stole my thunder. You mentioned parity at the beginning, and it's parity. I mean, you look through all of speed weeks for both the Outlaws and Lucas. Only, I think, 2 drivers won more than once, or there might have been 3, and that was across like 16 events. And I just think there's so much parity, and you're seeing it with Lucas. And, what jumps out to me after Hudson O'Neal wins last night at Atomic, he's now leading the Lucas Oil standings and with a new ride, with the Double Down Motorsports and Roger Sellers in the gang. You got a guy like Jonathan Davenport, who, let's not forget, I'm not sure how the points are going to play out with them postponing the feature. He was off the tour. He was not at Brownstown. He showed up at Atomic, ran well. Brownstown had to postpone their feature due to track conditions. It's very plausible that Jonathan Davenport's not going to run that tour this year. But you look at who's winning over there, and you've got the regulars that have won on the tour. But then you've got guys like Devin Moran that might not run the tour this year. Well, guess what? Devin's second in points. It's very interesting. It always takes for both tours. It takes, 2 or 3 weekends outside of speed weeks to sort things out, because the points get diluted with the guys that aren't going to run the tour that run. That Lucas is very interesting. I'm hearing through the grapevine. I know that Kyle Strickler is committed as an Outlaw driver. I'm hearing he still might run Lucas, but he's leading Outlaw points. He's buried like 23rd in the Lucas points. Jimmy Owens is trying to dig out of a hole. I think it's going to take a couple more weekends. And the interesting point about that, Lucas doesn't race again until April 16th and 17th. Hell, it could be May before we really know how the complexion of who is and isn't going to run that tour and who's going to be the favorites.
I feel like we heard about at the beginning of the season that Overton might run, Lucas full-time or Outlaws full-time. And this weekend, he basically drops off of Lucas to go run Bristol. I can't fathom a points leader for a series, especially after 8 or 9 nights, just completely walking away from a points lead. And I feel like this isn't even a topic of conversation in the late model world right now. Is this something that happens regularly to that, to the point that no one is talking about it?
Well, I guess look at it and let's put it in the sprint car world. If Freddie Raymer went down and had an amazing speed weeks and he was leading the World of Outlaw points, would he have been at Cotton Bowl Speedway this weekend? Maybe, but I think probably not. Not with everything you got, Pennsylvania scenes fired up, wide open up there. Same deal with this. Brandon Overton, and I'm not saying the next year, I think you will see him on a tour, but where Brandon's based out in Georgia, man, you get into the summer and you got the Southern Nationals, and earlier you get Spring Nationals, and he can pick these crown jewels. And we saw him win the USA Nationals last year, and we saw him win some other big races. He can pick these crown jewels when he wants to run them, but he can run, 12 nights a month within 4 hours of the house for anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000. And it's kind of hard. It's kind of like that Pennsylvania posse situation where it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense for those guys to go out and follow an all-star or an Outlaws, because they can run for so much around the house, make more money, and spend a lot less. I think by next year you will see Overton out there, but he made it known this year he was not looking to run a tour. And man, I'm going to be honest. I kind of enjoy these guys that run the true Outlaw schedule, and you never know where they're going to show up and all that. Growing up, and I'm a guy that's made a lot of money off websites and things like that, and the internet's been good to me. But I miss, 10 years old, going to an Outlaw sprint car race or a Southern All-Star late model race and really not knowing who the hell was going to show up until they pulled through the gate. And, that romanticism is kind of gone in our sport to an extent. Who's going to be where pretty much every weekend. And I like where Brandon Overton still, he surprises people sometimes where he does and doesn't go.
He, if we take a look kind of at last year, it was Overton, Shepard, Owens were kind of the 3 guys we were talking about all year. And he seems kind of to be the only one that's kind of continued that momentum from last season. As we kind of look over the course of the year, how many wins do we think is possible for Overton? Could he win one of these big money shows at Eldora? We're coming up with a World and the Dream with, multiple events of those. What are you kind of projecting for a guy like him through the rest of the season?
Well, on the same token, talking about him not running a tour, and that sometimes that team takes on off weekend. And because of that, I feel like they have guns blazing that much more going into like a Dream or a World. He's won prelims, at Eldora before. I definitely think he's a guy who won the USA Nationals last year. I think he's a guy that can knock down some major crown jewels this year. And to your point, yeah, I mean, he's separated himself from what Shepard and Owens have done early in the year. Now, Shepard, they've had some opportunities where they started on the front row and they couldn't capitalize. Jimmy Owens, on the other hand, I think that there's a giant magnet under the body of that 20 car, because he has been like a ping pong ball all year. I mean, people have just been bouncing off of him. He's had awful luck. I think that team has speed. I just don't think they've been able to show it so far. But right now, Brandon Overton, it's going to be very interesting this weekend. They go to Cherokee, a place where I think he's won 3 straight World of Outlaw races. And you got twin fives on Friday and a 40,000 to win on Saturday. Man, it's hard to bet against Overton right now. He's looking really good. And the cool thing is again, after this weekend, who the hell knows where he's going to show up the next weekend?
You talked about Davenport, and I definitely wanted to ask you about him specifically because he comes out at the beginning of the year at the Wild West Shootout and just lights the week on fire, then goes to Florida and struggles, then decides, I'm not sure if I'm running Lucas or not, and then goes to Bristol and then wins the 50,000 at Bristol. Like, I mean, how do you get a handle on where Jonathan Davenport is after what we've seen so far this year?
Well, I can't. When he came to the Wild West Shootout and he won 3 of the races, got a $10,000 bonus for that, and then he wins the finale. So that was another 25. He wins the points, so he basically made 38,000 in one night. And you're like, okay, JD's, he's got his stuff together. It's gonna be a big year for that team. And then he goes to Speed Weeks, and man, it was just struggle bus. And he made a comment to me the final night there at Bubba Raceway Park, the final Lucas Oil points event. He said, "I can't get out of this damn state fast enough." He's like, "This has just been. We're gonna go regroup." He hinted then he didn't know if they were going to run the tour. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't believe him. I said he will run the tour. And then I'll be damned if, they don't work out a deal for Kyle Busch to drive one of their cars at Bristol. So, Jonathan's there, and, and then he skips the events. And, this isn't the last time. Let's not forget with what's going on with the, that situation with those Race XR promotions. They booked a 50,000 to win against the Knoxville Late Model Nationals. That's a Lucas Oil event. So this would not be the last event, and then they posted some other incentives if you run through their 50,000 win in Vegas in November. So I never would have dreamed Jonathan would be off that tour, but right now it looks like he very well is just going to hit and miss. I know he's talked to us about possibly running for the Castrol FloRacing Night in America points championship. That's 20 grand. And maybe, maybe teams watch what Brandon Overton did last year and they're like, you know what? Less could be more. We're going to give that a shot. And maybe that Team 49 is one of them.
What were your impressions of the week at Bristol, from what you saw there between the crate stuff and the supers and kind of how especially those last 2 super late model nights went between Fergie and Larson and Davenport?
Yeah, it definitely went better on Saturday, probably one of the best nights, Admittedly, it didn't keep up with the week just a ton because I had a lot of things going on, some promotions I was doing. I think it's probably good that I think they were maybe less than 800 of the total cars showed up that of the, as many as 13 to 1400. And talking with Brad Hockaday that did some scoring and things over there, he said, here in year one, we're probably very lucky we didn't have that because it was just a big learning curve. So there was a lot of eyes on the sport. You obviously hated to see a lot of torn up race cars, but you saw some guys, Chris Ferguson, that was a bucket list thing. He wins there. Jonathan Davenport wins. It was an interesting deal, and it's going to be even more interesting as we go into the Cup race this weekend and we see how that goes. And then we see how the World of Outlaws late model and the modified weekend, and then the World of Outlaws sprint cars and big block weekend, how those go with the restricted entries. If that kind of makes the track, it makes the shows obviously going to be more efficient because you've got fewer cars. It'll be interesting to see how it raced. But, on Saturday, admittedly, some of the stuff I saw, it looked like that it raced pretty well on Saturday.
What do you think about the NASCAR drivers that came in and you saw Austin Dillon run a crate, you saw Corey LaJoie run a crate, and then obviously, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, and Chase Elliott run supers. Do you think that's a big boost for the late model world to have guys that, kind of have those profiles come in and run those shows?
Well, absolutely. And I think it's a big boost for the NASCAR world because I don't think it's a big secret that NASCAR is kind of looking for any avenue they can get. Thus, Dirt on Bristol with the Cup Series. They're trying to get some fans back, attract some new fans. And I think it's, I listened to an interview with Kenny Wallace recently, and he talked about how, dirt people just hating that pavement world and thinking the pavement world hates them and rooting against each other. And he's like, man, and it's not one, it's not that way. And two, we all need each other. And I kind of look at it that way. And I like seeing those guys come in. I talked to Corey LaJoy before he went into the weekend. He had never raced dirt before. And that's why he ran the crate late model for Corey Hitchcock Racing. I think it's pretty cool. Do I watch as much Cup stuff as I used to? No, I keep tabs on, Memphis area driver Ricky Stenhouse Jr., how he's doing and some of that. But a lot of times I'm on the road or I've got other things going on. So I don't watch a lot of NASCAR, but I'm definitely going to see how the Cup race goes at Bristol. And, I'm excited to, see how things go at, Knoxville this year with some of that stuff. So I think it's good, man. I think the cross promotion, it doesn't hurt us. That's for sure. At very least, it's a net zero and there's no gain and there's no loss, but I think there's a gain.
The Outlaw late models, right now Kyle Strickler leading the points, and he has it's like the tale of two seasons. He starts out the year, really struggles with Lucas, and then comes out with the Outlaws and wins a couple of shows, and he's leading the points right now. Do we really think he could be a contender all the way down the stretch this year for that championship?
Well, I do. Because here's one thing, Kyle has no shortage of confidence. And he's gone to some places he hasn't been and done really well, especially in a late model. He went to Fairbury in a late model for the first time and set a new track record last September. So, he could be, but that is a long, grueling deal, these national deals. And you look at guys, the Brandon Sheppard team, and obviously, and you look at Ricky Weiss and you look at those guys over there, and it's still interesting to see where Clanton's going to land. You don't know where Shane Clanton's going to end up at. He's kind of riding the fence. And again, not 100% sure right now. You don't know what to believe anymore, but you don't know exactly where Strickler is going to run, and it's going to be a minute before they have to decide between the two. So gun to my head right now, can Kyle Strickler win the World of Outlaws championship this year? No. Can he finish in the top three? Yes. That's what I feel right now. Because you've seen it when you're with the Outlaws. A big part of that is getting out of speed weeks and still being a contender. Well, he's got that behind him, and he went down there and won even. So, he's definitely got a big shot in his arm in that sense.
When you look around too, who are the other guys that we should be paying attention to? And I'm worried a little bit about Weiss just because, he's switching to his own car this year. Plus, we know he can pass a lot of cars, but he hasn't done a great job of starting up front. Can he really break through and win the championship this year, even with all of the things that kind of seem to be stacked against him?
Well, you're right. Things are stacked against him. And if he's going to do it, it's going to have to start this weekend in Cherokee. He's got to start making up ground. You can't spot these guys a lot of points. I think Brandon Sheppard was 8th in points leading speed weeks. And after a few post speed weeks races, he's like second. So he is second. So it can change quick. So I'll be interested on Weiss. Cade Dillard's had unbelievably bad luck. Let's not forget, terrible. He was leading the opener and he got some contact that ended his deal. I think Dillard's got a team that can do something. They just need a little bit of luck. You keep thinking Darrell Lanigan's going to kick it into high gear, and we're going to find out as we start get into the meat of the season on that. But it's kind of hard to. It's hard to go away from Shepard. What he can do there. Strickler's an eye raiser. Will he stay over there? Won't he? That's to be determined. There's good young talent that's come to that tour. With the Ross Bells. It's going to be an interesting year, and again, I don't think we're going to really know until maybe middle of next month exactly who's committed to what. And because of that, it really muddies the waters.
Who's a guy that you think that doesn't get a lot of national attention that we should be keeping an eye on? Maybe not this year, maybe this year, for sure in the future.
I really think, I think people know him as far as guys on national tours right now, but I don't think people realize Ross Bells. He's got a ton of potential. And Ross is, he's won with the Outlaws, and he's won with Lucas, and he's got a good deal with Big Frog Motorsports. And he's a contender. He's a guy that can absolutely win at Cherokee this weekend. Ross has had some opportunities, and he's really capitalized on them. But hey, we're in a sport where a lot of times sponsorship dollars talk. And just as he's really got his groove in some of these rides, different things have happened. He's lost those rides. He's in a ride now where he's very stable. They've got the things they need, and Ross definitely has the ability. I feel like, between the national tours, I think Ross Bells is a definite under the radar kind of guy. A guy that I think is kind of under the radar, and people go, well, hell, he's already won an Outlaws race this year and he's second in the Lucas points. How can he be under the radar? I think Devin Moran's got even more talent than a lot of people realize. And, right now it looks like he's not going to run the Lucas Tour full time. Now that can change if he keeps running well with him being second in points. But I think Devin is a guy that we haven't seen his full potential yet. He's had some things, work against him at different times and some bad luck. But, that's two on my radar. And I really, he won the Firecracker. last year, but I don't think we've seen just how high Cade Dillard can fly. I really think that driver's got a lot of talent and maybe still a little bit under the radar for some people. I think I was looking across some kind of forum or something on social media this week, and somebody was like, who knows more about Cade Dillard, which is kind of fascinating because he's been on the road with the World of Outlaws for a couple of years. So that tells me that not yet a household name, but, some young talent.
The Lucas situation is so interesting to me. And you talking about Devin Moran there, and, Hudson O'Neal leading the points in that new ride's got a couple of wins already, but, with Owens kind of a little further back, question marks about Davenport. Is this like McCready's deal to win this year? He hasn't got a win yet, but here the last, 6 or 8 races, he's been like top 5, like regularly. And we know he can get hot and win a lot of races. Do you think he's the favorite for Lucas this year right now?
Man, I'm going to be honest. I like to gamble. If I was putting money on somebody, I don't know who I'd put money on over there, because guys have shown flashes of brilliance so far this year, and then they've really struggled. There's been no in between. And, let's not forget McCready led the points for a long time last year. And it looked like that was going to be his year. And then Jimmy Owens got red hot, and, McCready ended up finishing second in the points. I'm going to tell you right now, I think that if they can keep things rolling the way they are, I think Hudson O'Neal could be a sleeper for a championship run over there, because the kid's got talent. I think he learned a lot from, his previous time on the road. He's had some time to step back, reevaluate everything. I think Hudson could make a run at it. I think Ricky Thornton Jr. is going to be a guy that's going to win, 5 or 6 races over there this year. I mean, let's not forget he's already won, this year. He's a guy that can really be an eye opener, and I think can do some things. There's a lot of parity over there, and a few bad nights could really bury you. And now that we're getting into the meat of the season, it becomes that much more paramount on who can do what. And, the thing about Lucas that also makes it so damn hard is they sanction a lot of the crown jewels. Well, there's a lot of privateers that drop in on those shows, and it makes it really hard. Just like Speed Weeks. I mean, who would have thought we'd be creeping on 80 cars at East Bay? Not me. That really buried some guys to start the year, and they're still trying to dig out of that. So, man, I don't know who's going to be the champion over there, but Hudson's leading the points right now. He's got the backing. He's got the equipment. The kid can drive. This could be the year for Hudson O'Neal, but, as we get down the home stretch of a season where Tim McCready lost the points last year, is that where he's going to regain them this year? Only time's going to tell.
You have a busy week on tap. You guys are starting the Night in America season, this week. What do you kind of, think about that series, and how do you think it's going to play out? Kind of give me the full rundown on what to expect with that series this year.
Well, we're really excited. I'd be lying if I didn't tell you we don't know exactly what to expect by the time we get to October and we get the final event at Volunteer Speedway. We've had a ton of interest. We're evaluating the full disclosure. We're evaluating the weather right now because we opened this Thursday at 411 Motor Speedway, and it's looking sketchy. We're keeping an eye on it. But this field that is shaping up, it's really going to break our heart if we don't have it. I mean, everybody from Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson, showing intent to come, to guys like Jimmy Owens and Scott Bloomquist and Jonathan Davenport and Corey Hedgecock and, all those regional guys thrown in with a bunch of national guys. Earl Pearson Jr. is supposed to be there. And the beauty of this deal, we have 10 races scheduled, and only your best 7 finishes count. And the big thing that we want to do with this is we want to do midweek shows. This is where I go back to my sprint car roots. Growing up, Thursday Night Thunder from Ventura or IRP, or I think they might have even done something from Ascot, and, to the Slick 50 shootout with Manzanita and all that. And I know that was on Sunday night, but I always, as a kid, man, tuned into ESPN and watching them from Winchester, Indiana, the midgets running. That'd get me fired up and ready to go to Memphis Motorsports Park on Friday night. We're trying to bring back kind of that kind of stuff where it's some midweek shows, and we've got, Wednesday, Thursday shows are what these 10 are. And we're just trying to do something. We're not trying to compete with the World of Outlaws and not with Lucas Oil. And, if anything, we're scheduling races that were most of the races are within 4 to 5 hours of them on a Thursday, so that maybe it brings more guys to the area. But either way, I'm really excited. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes down. We've got guys like Ryan King, Ashton Winger, some drivers like that, Jensen Ford, so you've got national flair, you've got regional guys all talking about doing it. And it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But man, 10 races, a $62,000 points fund. We're very excited about that. If you have perfect attendance after the first event, you pay no entry fee. The top 8 in points after the first event get $500 show up money. We're doing 2 drawings at every driver's meeting. For 2 people get Hoosier tires. 2 other people randomly get $150 cash. we're just trying to have fun with this deal and see how it all shakes down. And I'm sure we're going to learn a lot of things to do different for year two, but here in year one, we couldn't be more fired up about it. We're very prepared. We just need Mother Nature to be a race fan. That's what we need.
I know that this kind of came out of, like last year during COVID, you guys kind of start coming out and doing some of these midweek shows to kind of just get racing going again. But when did the conversations kind of first start about this being a possibility? And how did you guys kind of work into this?
Well, honestly, it's exactly what you said. Things racing, if you will, kicked back off. I think like the last Thursday in April there at Tri County. And that's kind of when racing came back to life, and there were no fans there, but there were a gazillion watching online. And then from there we went to Peevely, Missouri, and we did the Carl Chevrolet 50, and then we went down to I put a deal together literally, and the day after that race, that Sunday, we put a deal together for 4 days from then at Magnolia Motor Speedway. And just the feedback was so big on these midweek shows, we were like, this might have legs even when the world gets back to pseudo normal. So we started talking, then we started putting it together. And to be honest, we were talking about some associate sponsors and some different things. And then Castrol they really came in kind of like in the 11th hour, and they were really about this. And I don't know about you, but when I think of Castrol, the first thing I think of is John Force, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And
yeah.
all the years on that. And so when they came on and they were like, we love what you're doing here. We're all in. That allowed us to do a lot of different things. And we were like, okay. But the one thing that we knew, and we had some tracks kind of get their feelings hurt, and it was nothing against them. And it's not to say that we're not going to try to hit some of them next year. We couldn't go past 10 tracks, and wanted to try to support the people that supported us last year. Tri County, Fairbury, we did the one for the road, which was wildly successful. So we wanted to try to get as many as we could, and that's where it was born from. And Michael Rigsby and I spent a lot of time talking about it, and then putting it together. And Matt Curl's been very intricate in it. Now we've got Kelly Carlton as our race director. Kelly just worked at Bristol this weekend. He does the Wild West Shootout with us. He does the Dome. My partner in crime, Dustin Jarrett's going to be on the broadcast with me. And we're doing kind of a cool deal where we're going to have the studio show. That's probably one of the neatest things we've got is Dustin and I are going to every event to announce them, but you're going to have Michael Rigsby and Derek Kessinger in the studio. We're going to be bouncing back and forth. So it's kind of like what's going on right now with the NCAA tournament, where, they're popping into the studio at halftime to talk about things and analysis. And we got a lot of fun things up our sleeves. And, it's just, we're trying to think outside the box. And in a world where streaming is a big deal, give people that are at home something big to check out, but also with these tracks, hopefully put some big fans in the stands, and the people at home check out these races and go, damn, that's a really cool place. I'm going to 411 Motor Speedway later this year or next year. That's the ultimate goal, is people see what we're doing. It makes them want to go to the track. Everybody wins.
I know you guys are pretty locked in with FloRacing, and I have done a lot of singing of FloRacing praises on my various shows, because I think all of the things that are happening over there are super fun. But I'm curious, from a position where you are sitting, how much fun is it to be able to kind of experiment and try things and still have, the opportunity to have, good resources behind you to do things like studio shows? I mean, I feel like a lot of the stuff that we're seeing really hasn't been done before. And it's, from the outside, it's fun to watch that happen. But from you kind of putting all of this together, is it fun? Is it stressful? Kind of, where do you sit on this?
Well, I can't take a whole lot of credit. Michael Rigsby, Derek Kessinger, and then there's a ton of people in the corporate office back in Austin, Texas that do a lot. Tim Truex, i.e. Loud Pedal, he's orchestrating a lot from out in California from his home. And I'm just lucky to kind of get to come in and do a lot of these things. It's exciting. I mean, it's been an evolution because, with the Dirt on Dirt and what we did there, a lot of times there'd be 3 or 4 of us that had to make a decision. Well, now you go into a corporate setting and you've got a lot of different people with roles in it. And it's a blessing, but it's an adjustment, whereas you might have 3 or 4 before. Now you got 40 people that are having some form of input in there. So, very lucky to get to do these things. It's always a work in progress. We're always looking to make it better. And to me, the coolest thing that with what Flo's got going on, and this is outside looking in, is I can go in my media room and flip the TV on, and hell, I might be able to watch a street stock race from somewhere tonight. And that's what I like. I like the variety of what's going on there. But there's a lot of people doing a lot of cool things in streaming. I mean, Dirt Vision's really picked their game up with what they're doing this year. You obviously have Lucas Plus that's been launched. Trent Berry and the guys at Racing Dirt, they do a fantastic job. You got Speed 51 and what they do. So there's a lot of people, and I feel like they're continuing to push the envelope. And I'm a guy that obviously streaming has been good to me, But I also make no bones about it. There's nothing like being there in person. And, you know, the biggest thing we want is we want the, you know, these streams to do well, but we want people to keep going to these races as well. Because that's really the beauty of our sport. So, you know, people ask me all the time, they're like, so do you think streaming will ever take the place of being there? And I'm like, not even almost. It's like watching a NASCAR race on TV. You don't get the feel for a car going by you at 198 miles an hour in Daytona on TV. You got to be there and, you know, being at the dirt track, the sights and the sounds. But this is the next best thing for the people that can't be. And that's what we're trying to do. And we got a lot of cool things we're working on. There could be some, you know, really big stuff coming up that we haven't announced yet. But I think for me, I like working with all the genres. You know, we from the Wild West Shootout, we created the Wild Wing Shootout this year. And while Mother Nature threw us every curveball, we got it in. But it was really cool to work with the sprint cars and to see the potential there. And having people in our corner like Eldora Speedway and Tony Stewart and, you know, now the Chili Bowl and, you know, Emmett Hahn and the Lucasville American Sprint Car Series, the Tulsa Shootout, all of that only allows you to do that much more. So I'm excited to see where the future can goes, but make no bones about it, I want people to go to the track whenever they can.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate the time tonight. Where can we, you know, kind of keep up with you this year? I know you're going to be a lot of different places and you're into a lot of things, but maybe at least for the foreseeable future, where are we going to see you at?
Well, I definitely check out FloRacing.com. You know, or FloRacing in general, get the app. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. I just did a race from Little Rock on Saturday night from that we had live on there with the Comp Cam Super Dirt Series. But yeah, you know, check that out for sure. You know, I've got some iRacing stuff coming. I'm still doing some of the iRacing in the office. I enjoy doing that. That's fun to see. But yeah, and apart from that, just MSRmafia.com. That's my business. We do public relations websites. A lot of stuff's been very good to me. And man, I'm you talked about you don't even know how to describe me. I like to say I'm a jack of all I'm a jack of all trades and master of none. But I stay very, very busy, but very lucky to get to work in racing and man, just get to work with amazing folks like yourself. And I really appreciate you having me on.